Okay, hello everyone and welcome to our very first session for Can't Wait to Paint. Today we are looking at making little ladybugs and we're going to turn those into a wreath that you can use for cards or for your journal or for displays of any kind. Really simple. No experience required to do this kind of watercolor. So I've got my 300 GSM watercolor paper. It's nice and thick and it's going to take the water really well. I'm using, this is my favorite brush at the moment. It's a number 8 sable medium liner, and at the moment it looks really fluffy on the end. I don't know if you can see, a bit fluffy, but when I put it into my water, I get this absolutely perfect tip, and that allows me to do really fine, detailed, controlled work. So this is definitely a brush I'm absolutely loving at the moment. Another one that I use all the time is this one. It's a Daub number 4 round, and this one sort of just keeps its head, but it's a really nice shape and it feels really nice to paint with. So to make the ladybugs, there's really 4 different ways that I want to show you how to do them. And we're going to use my Jelly Brights paints, just because they're really bright and luminous and I like them. So I'm going to start with some red. And the first way that we're going to try ladybugs is just with our paintbrush. So I'll show you my water, where you can wet your brush, wet the paints, and then I tend to dip the tip again, to be completely honest, just because I like it to be wetter rather than drier. And then I just really carefully paint circles. Just like that. I can control where they go. I can control how big they are, how saturated the color pigment is. And as you can see, it gets lighter. Every time I paint one, they get a little bit lighter. So I can, if I wanted to, which I do, pick up the color from the first one, which is usually a big no-no, but works for me. And you can spread it into the other areas, or you can simply reapply the color to your brush. So you get really good at painting these little circles. Okay, so that's the first way of painting the circle. The second way is a bit more random. So if you don't want to have it as regimented as being able to place the dots, then what you can do is use spatter. I might use a slightly different color for this one. I'm going to go with Quin Magenta. This one requires your brush to be really wet and for there to be quite a lot of color on your brush. Again, I always re-dip, and then to get some spatter, what you can do is hold the brush like this and tap on the top, but I want quite big drops. So I'm going to shape my brush down. Now that gives me these very random shapes, and what I can do is then use my brush to turn those random shapes, not all of them, but just the ones I want, into the ladybug dots. You can make them different sizes, different positions, keep some of the random dots just for fun. Do a little tiny one there. Okay, so you can achieve that same effect a little bit more random and spontaneous by using spatter. Another technique was actually from my son, who has encouraged me to go back to finger painting, believe it or not. So what I'm going to do is actually dip my finger in my water. Then I'm going to dip it in my paint colour. It's a beautiful colour called Ladybug. And then I can use my finger to get the shapes. Just so that you've got slightly less control for that random effect. The fourth way of getting those circles is to use a tool other than a paintbrush. And what I'm using is it's just a cotton tip. I dip it very lightly in the water because you don't want it to get too wet. Choose my colour. These ones I might do some blue. So I dip it into my colour, just the tip. Careful you don't get any little hairy bits. And then I can use the tip to get little dots. So there's all these different ways of creating the ladybugs. Now, before we go any further with this particular example, we need to wait for it to dry, and it should dry absolutely completely bone dry. You don't want to put any ink over the top of wet watercolor because it will make the most inks run unless it's archival. We're going to be using just a plain art line fine liner to do the next part, and these are not color fast, which means that you do have to wait for your designs to have dried completely before you do the ink. Okay, welcome back. We are going to do the second part of the practice page and turn your random dots into little ladybugs. Now what I'm going to use is a plain fine liner. Mine's a 0.4, but you can use any fine liner that you can get your hands on. You could even use a plain black pen or a coloured pen. I mean, I'm not a big fan of black ink, but it goes really nicely with these little bugs. So all I do is keep them quite stylized. Remember, it's just about making them cute. They're not going to be true to life necessarily, just cute. So I find a spot on the circle where I'm quite happy, or I can see that there's a shape that could be a head or a point, like here. And then I draw a semicircle in that spot and flick out the antennae. Let me see if I can get a little closer for you. Okay, and then ladybugs are insects, so they have 6 legs, just little legs like that. And on this one, I'm going to give the suggestion of wings by putting a faint line down the center, just to show the division. And then ladybugs, they have black dots usually. So I'm going to put some black dots on the wings. You can have them match on both sides, or you can have them being slightly more random. These ones are going to match. And there's my first little ladybug. And then you just keep going with each of your dots until you have them all finished. And you can vary them up. So this is a very simple one. You could have a change in the line like this, keeping the dots. This one's a bit more random. It really comes down to any design you like. There you go. So you can, vary it up. Just use the lines, be creative, see what can be done. Okay, so this is what mine looks like after I've put in all the ink work. You can be as detailed with the ink work as you like. See, on the littlest ones, all I did was put dots on them. I didn't even give them legs because they're so small. They were quite difficult to put the detail on. But the bigger ones, you can get quite detailed. You can do lines, dots, patterns, anything you like. So again, not true to life, but very cute. So we're going to use these techniques to create the beautiful wreath. See you in the next video. Okay, it is time to map out our wreath. I am using 300 GSM watercolour paper, same as before. This one is cut to size, it's square, and it's about 21 centimetres by, again, about just shy of 21 centimetres. This particular design lends itself to a square piece of paper. So what you're going to need is I'm using a saucer to draw around, and I'm using a smaller bowl, this one here, to draw around, just because I prefer to do that than to use a compass. But if you have compass, you feel free to use that. The only thing with a compass is you will end up with a small mark in the center of your page where the point goes, so just bear that in mind. Now what I'm going to do is turn my saucer over, lay it onto my square, and I'm just going to move it until I'm happy that it's in the middle. I'm not going to measure. If I'm happy it's in the middle, then it's fine. I'm not trying to be that precise. I'm using a monograph mechanical pencil. This is a 0.3. It's the only pencil that I use, and I'm using a 2B lead. So I'm just gently, carefully going to trace around my saucer. And I don't want to push too hard, because with watercolor, anywhere that there's pencil line, if you paint over the top of it, it becomes really, really difficult to rub out. And we're going to rub these lines out when we're done. So that's my first circle. That one's nice and big. That's where the writing is going to go. And then I have my smaller dish, which sits inside. And I'm just going to line it up until I'm happy that it's in the center, or they're close enough. And again, really gently, not pressing hard at all. I'm going to trace that. Oops, that's moved. And it doesn't have to be perfect. So if it does move like mine just did, that's okay. It's not going to ruin your drawing. Okay, so we've got our 2 circles. Now the first thing that we're going to use is this inner circle here is our guideline for where the ladybugs are going to go. And you can do your bugs in any of the techniques that we discussed in the previous video. So you can paint them in, you can use your fingers, you can use a tool. I'm going to do a combination of different techniques, and I'm going to use my my liner pen for this particular painting excursion. Or maybe not. No, I've changed my mind. I'm going to use my finger. My son would be very proud of me. Okay, so I'm going to choose my colours. I'm going to start with a nice bright yellow. So I've dipped my finger in my water. Didn't clean my water, I probably should have. And I'm going to dip my finger into my paint. So just around that inner circle, I'm going to place out some nice bright yellow finger painted dots. Just like that. Cool. Now I'm going to wash my finger. And you can see I've spaced them out. I am crossing that line, and you can feel free to go right through the center of that line, but also to go slightly either side. As long as you don't go over the outside line or too far into the center, it should still be fine. Now I'm going to use a nice bright red. This is a, oh, maybe not that one. Nice bright. Actually, we won't use red. What kind of wreath would it be without using Ladybug? Ladybug is a beautiful, beautiful pink colour, and I think it's fitting given what we're doing. So put them close, but not too close. And you'll see I've got a little drop here. I don't know if you can see, but a tiny little drop of red where I didn't want it. Don't worry about it. It will blend later. Yeah, I wouldn't touch it. So that's 3 of the bright pink. Feel free to turn your page so your finger mark looks different. Don't panic if they're not perfect. Now that's 4. We want 1 more. We'll put it over here. Okay. Clean my finger again. This time I'm going to do some nice bright orange. We want to try and get the full colour wheel. So nice bright orange colour. Just like that. Okay. Now, most of you know that orange is not my favourite colour, but you still have to have it. And this particular one, this very, very luminous orange, makes me very happy. All right, our nice purpley colour. This one, I think. Again. This is a very, the purples tend to be quite dark, so I'm not going to use too many of them because they will take over the picture, and we still have some more colours to go. So again, just like the orange, I'm only going to do 3 of them. Okay, time to move on to blue. I'm going to use an intense blue, nice and bright. So all I'm really doing is just following this circle. So that it doesn't have to be perfectly spaced, so that they're quite close. Okay, so there's my blue, and I need to have some green. Now I am running out of space, so nice bright green. Now, if you do get some water droplets where you don't want them, just use the paper towel to absorb them up straight away. Never panic. Okay. And some green. Oh, that one's got red in it as well. I'll fix that in a minute. Nice bright green. Do a little one here. And another little one, because we've got 4 of them. There. Okay, so my finger painted bugs are done. I'm going to add to them using that tool, but before I do want to just fix that little bit there where there was already that dot of red. I'm going to take one of my brushes, absolutely dry, and I'm going to gently put it into the color and pick it up, wash it out, dry it off with my paper towel, pick the color up again, dry it off, color up again. There we go. Now when this is finished, you won't actually see that, and the variation's good. They're happy accidents. All right, so I'm using my Jelly Bright palette again, and I'm going to just add some really little dots with my cotton tip just to fill in the space. So again, just wet the end of the cotton tip. I'm going to start with yellow. Paints are a little dry at the moment. Never good with watercolor. Cool. And then we're just going to add a few of these. Oops, still don't have enough paint. A few of these little dots. Where should we put another one? Actually, we won't use yellow. We've got enough yellow there. We might use some blue, I think. Just to fill out these little spaces. So I'm just placing them randomly around the circle. Just like that. Oh, I think we need one more over here. Do some, might do some in the pink, I think. Okay. It's not looking too bad. Maybe a couple in green. Maybe tuck one in over here. Cool, and I am happy with that. So again, before I do any of my ink work or add in any of the details, I need to let it dry, and so do you. Okay, so now my original design has dried, which is excellent because we don't want the ink to run into it. I'm going to use my eraser and very carefully go over the pencil line from that inner circle. Just really gently, you don't want to pick any of the paper or the paint up. And you'll remember what I was saying to you before about the pencil marks being difficult to erase after you've painted on them, and this is a prime example. So if I just show you there, can you see that in the yellow the line doesn't rub out quite right? So what you can do is give it another try. It's always a good idea, but I wouldn't worry too much because we're going to ink these. That line in the yellow dots could become an inked line for the back of the ladybug. So I'm not so worried that I can't get the line out. Just want to soften it if I can. Okay, so again, I'm using the black fine liner 0.4, just like we did in the practice section. And I'm going to do exactly the same thing. I'm going to put in all of the little bug details that make them look like ladybugs. And I want to try and make my bugs face in different directions. Some of them may overlap a little bit, like here. This one will overlap, and that's okay. You might want to have a go at trying to draw some with wings open. Some shapes lend themselves to that. Like this one. This one isn't quite a circle, it's sort of pushed out to the side. So to me that looks like his wings are open. So let me show you what that means. I'll see if I can zoom in. So I would put the head here. And I can see his wings being open. That. And I'm still going to give him his dots. And again, you don't have to do dots. You could do flowers. You could do love hearts. You could do anything that you want to create your bug. Now, because he's facing inwards, I'm going to get this yellow one to face outwards. Cat hair on my desk. This wouldn't be my house or my art if there wasn't cat hair. Okay, and then I might give him some legs. Okay, so what you need to do is to go around and fill all of them in. I also like to add in a few other little details. So, for example, where can I do this blue one? So if I've got this little teeny tiny blue one, first of all, the colour on the back of that blue one is so dark that it might not take the black pen really well. If you've got colours that are too dark, don't panic. Use a white Sharpie, and I'll show you how to do that after I'm finished by putting the light back in. But start with trying to put the details in, and if you want to lighten them up, you can. What I also like to do is to get like almost a movement line, a little dot with a curl in the end to show that there's a little bit of movement for that particular one. I tend to only do that with the very littlest ones because I think it's cute, but with the bigger ones you could maybe do a dotted line on our original practice sheet. That's what I did here. I put just a hint of a dotted line behind him as if he's been walking through something. Cool. So now you need to spend some time and fill in all your bugs. Happy drawing. Okay, so now we've done our detail work with the ink pen, it's time to add in some of the words. I always do mine in pencil first. There's nothing worse than making a mistake with your writing at this stage. So I am going to use my pencil and I'm going to go back over the top with the same fine liner when I'm happy with the design. So you can really choose whatever text you want at all. It might say happy birthday in the middle. It could say congratulations, maybe a little inspirational quote. There's also the words that go around the outside, and I'm going to start with those. And again, it can be whatever you want it to be. So I've decided I'm going to use the phrase good things take time around the outside, and I'm going to see how much space that needs. So if I start, maybe if I start here, slightly off center, at about 10 o'clock. Yeah, about 10 o'clock. That means that when someone is viewing your work, they will see this first part of the sentence completely. So I'm just going to use block capitals. Show you what I'm doing. So I've put a little mark to show where I'm going to start. And I'm just going to use my own handwriting and do capital letters. And I'm going to go on the inside of that circle because I want it to be uniform. If I'm outside, maybe the height of my letter might throw the circle out. So I'm going to keep it on the inside. So good things take time. And I'm going to repeat that same phrase all the way around. On the original one of these that I did, I actually put that phrase in the middle. I have changed it for this one. And I'm turning it as I'm working. I'm not trying to write on a peculiar angle for obvious reasons. I reckon I can fit in just one more. Perfect. So now you can see the writing goes all the way around and gives that second circle. So it adds a little bit of interest, and it also frames your beautiful ladybugs. All right. So what I'm now going to do is go over all of that using my fine liner pen, and when I have done that and I'm sure that the ink has dried, I will rub out that final pencil line and we can work on the center. Okay, we are on to the home stretch. So when I was doing the inking, I was a bit annoyed. I must have had some water on my table, but I've got a tiny little smudge. Can you see where the word has smudged? And I've got a little bit of black ink that was on the side of my hand. So I should have taken my own advice that good things take time, and I should have put a piece of paper towel over where I was working and had my hand resting on the paper towel. Tip for you guys so that you don't make the same mistake. If you are like me and you have made a little smudge like that, I'm not so worried about these little teeny tiny ones, because that's sort of in keeping with all of the looseness of the design anyway. But here in the word, it's a little bit more obvious. I'm going to show you when we put the white onto the image. I'll show you how you can very carefully, very carefully attempt to fix that. But for now, I'm just going to concentrate on the part that's going in the middle. I am going to write, can't wait to paint. So to do that, I want, that is, I'm going to use a ruler, and again, pressing very lightly with my pencil, just create a space to put my lettering. Yeah, I'm okay with that. And I want this bottom part to be the biggest word, to paint. Now, coming up from there, just a small word in the middle, so a narrower space, and then top two words. Okay, and again, we're going to be rubbing that out, and I will be much more careful in the center. So we know, I might actually put that paper towel under my hand just in case. So we want can't wait to paint. Now we want the two to be as close to the center as possible. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in straight away, and I'm just going to use block capitals, but you can do any type of calligraphy or any special letters or printing that you would like to do. I'm just going to keep it very straight. So now we want can't and wait. Now can't and wait both have 4 letters each, which is nice of them. It'll fit very nicely, which is, this is going to be our center line. So we want to make sure that we get them evenly spaced on both sides as much as possible. So here, I put in the weight. The eye, and over here we're going to finish with the T, put in the apostrophe, okay, I'm happy with that. Can't wait to Now I could do this last word paint in a different font. Do I want it in different ones? Maybe in handwriting. Maybe we'll do some handwriting. So I'm going to do my old-fashioned handwriting that I learnt when I was at primary school. Probably not as accurate as it should be now. Can't wait to paint. There we go. I am very happy with that. All right, once again, I'm going to go over that with black ink. But just before I do, I would not be me if I didn't add a little bit of detail. So I'm going to tuck in just under here. I always include a star because for me that represents the universe and listening to it. You know, your gut feeling, whatever you want to call it, higher power. But that reminds me to trust my instincts. And you've got to share the love. So I think I might just add some teeny tiny little love hearts. And again, we're going for that rule of uneven numbers. So you can either have 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, but don't have even numbers. I'm happy with that. That's tucked in really nicely. Okay, so decide on which phrase you're going to put in your middle, and I will come back after I have inked it in. Okay, we are on the very, very last part. I have inked in my words in the middle. I inked the hearts and the little star. We've done the words on the outside. Now it comes down to putting some of the white back. I'm going to use a Posca uni pen in white. This one is, I'm not sure, it's a tiny one, a 0.7 tip, so it's a very fine tip. When you use them, give it a really good shake and be careful. Can you see the drip on the end of the pen there? Not sure if you can see it, but just be careful that you don't get drips. Okay, so always helpful to have a spare piece of paper next to you that you can test these things out. But on the bugs where they're a little bit dark and the detail is difficult to see, what you can do is use the white instead of the black. So even though I've already put the black dots on, it won't matter. Let's see if I can get you a little closer. See, it just brings them up, brings them to life. Now it's really easy to overdo white, so go really easy on how much you're using. Going to add a few in just to liven up these really dark colours. Just a few spots to really bring them back to life. This blue one didn't go so well. Be careful too when you're using a paint pen, just be really careful not to push down while you're actually working, because it will release a flood of ink and you might end up with a blob where you don't want it. There you go, that's looking much happier, much brighter. So again, I'm not doing it on every single one of them, just where the colour seems to be a little dark. a little bit more luminous when I do this one as well. There. Okay. I am pretty happy with that. I've got one more blue one here. Okay, very happy with that. The only thing I haven't done is to colour in my star. And of course, I don't have my coloured pencils with me. That would be way too organised. All right, so I'm going to use my number 8 very fine detail pen, brush. Remember I said it has a really fine tip, so I can use that very fine tip and my nice bright yellow to really carefully, let's see if I can get close for you, really carefully put in, and I've already inked around this, and this particular ink is not colour fast, so I'm going to be really careful not to touch the black if I can avoid it. Just to give a hint of colour to the star. I should really have painted it before I inked it. There, I'm happy with that. And there you have my little ladybug wreath. Just very quickly, I noticed after I finished the last video that I'd forgotten to show you how to fix this little blurred bit of writing. See where it blurred just ever so slightly. What you do is take your, lean on something, take your white paint pen and really carefully, you're trying to put the white back in the spaces where it's smudged. So really carefully, just putting the white back. Got to be gentle, gentle, gentle. There. So it won't be perfect, but it should be just enough that it's less obvious. Okay. And you see it as a whole, much less obvious. Thank you so much for sticking with me, and I really hope that your bugs look incredible, and I can't wait to see what you create.